Yes, I'm Angel Rabasa. I'm a senior political scientist at the RAND Corporation, specializing in international security and especially issues relating to terrorism and insurgency and political Islam. Before I was a member of the United States, I was a co-author with, I'm sure, the political Islam in Turkey that has to do with the AKP, coming to power and its policies. I have written publications about India, about station, a book coming out in Europe. So, international security issues, also more specifically relating to terrorism.
Yes.
And I have some, again, I have been involved with Turkey, State Department, Turkish back in the 1980s. Well, I think that before we can offer a solution to of terrorism in the, I mean, I'm not only because you find terrorists in Indonesia, in Africa, in Europe. So it's a global phenomenon. But I think that before we offer solutions, we need to understand terrorism. Terrorism it's a tactic, and it's something that can be used by different ideological positions to try to obtain political outcomes. And of course, you see groups like the terrorists in the zone. There are Basque terrorists in France, Spain. There is a right-wing terrorist, and they're violent, and that's what they have in common. But they come from very different ideological persuasions, and the terrorism is advance a particular agenda. Now, when you speak of the type of that you see in the Middle East and other countries that are by groups and Islamic ideology, the terrorism that we see is a manifestation very in the Muslim, and I would like to point out that of this particular terrorists, of this particular type of terrorists, are Muslims, because sometimes the West sees in the primary victims, but we are not. I mean, far more Muslims had by radical terrorists than people of other religions, and so that needs to be in mind. It's a product. This terrorism is a product of I think of an ideological conflict within certain countries. It's and this, the vast majority of Muslims who are I don't like to use the word moderate, Muslims, people who practice their religion in a traditional way, done this for centuries, and then you have a very small, by and large, a very small who are motivated by ideologies and issues that are on the of people in Muslim majority countries. Now, you see this group doing things, for example, or adherents to ideology, like destroying religious and monuments in places like Timbuktu. In Africa, we see that the radicals who have taken over the city of Timbuktu have been systematically destroying the cultural heritage of one of the centers of Islamic in Africa. Monuments that had been created during the Ottoman period in Bosnia. In Somalia, they have made a practice of destroying shrines of holy men. So they wave of violence that again not only against sinners, against Muslims who do not ideology, and violence is used as a mean against of attaining certain objectives. So that is again the root of the terrorism as we see it has to do with this ideological within Muslims. So the solution, if you ask me, we don't to end terrorism, and again because they have different ideological sources. This is something that needs to be faced by the Muslims themselves. Non-Muslims, people in the United States, in Europe, can only play a supportive role. I mean, we can provide assistance, we can support. It's a mainstream Muslims that to deal with attack a culture and on their own on a private religion. Let me that's the thing about generally called Salaf, because more the Islamist ideology there. This is actually ideology. When they go back to the practices of the time of the Prophet Muhammad and the ancestors, the Salaf were Salaf, of course. That is that the practice of the 7th century common Islam. In reality, their ideology is quite and is based on Western ideology, that totalitarian ideologies developed in the 20th centuries, and of the interesting as it claims to go back to Islam, that the whole totalitarian they have is quite modern, as well as that they to make their ideology. Yeah. You're quite right that if you look at the world in particular, and of course the focus of this Arab world, the ideologies, government that came to power after independence from the colonial powers, they generally had or ideologies. So they Nasser himself is a perfectly good example of that. So that the ideology among the political elites and the revolutionaries was a market for social, and ideologies fail to produce a political and economic development for the Arab countries. So the failure of this particular political and economic model, religious, when the socialist models failed, then the Islamic the Muslim Egypt is Islam is the solution. Meant by Islam is their particular interpretation of Islam. Quite that failure of what to radical Islamist solutions to the challenges and the problems of political and development in Arab in particular and other Muslim countries, necessarily Arab. Now, what's happening is very interesting, and this is where I think Turkey, could actually play or is playing a important role as a model. But we have seen in the so-called Spring, And of course, we don't know how where this movement is going to end, well or badly. But one of the of revolts against authoritarian governments in places like Egypt and Tunisia and Libya, that the people against the were not on the of an Islam agenda. Were not trying to, show. They were looking for that were responsive to the interests of people. Even if you look at organs of hood in Egypt, a lot of emphasis on the religious aspect of the agenda. What you saw is an emphasis on democracy, on popular representation. So if this revolution in the Arab world, if successful, and it is successful in bringing about a degree of government that have never experienced, have always can do that, can produce governments that are responsive to the people, then doing away much of the justification for Islamists who argued to bring this type of change through violence. So this could take, as we say, the wind sails of Islamism and bring a government that's more responsive to the side. To the other hand, because in Tunisia and Libya, and it's happening in Syria, it's of course a revolution. There is always a period of turmoil that can be instrumentalized. I mean, they may be small, they may not have popular, because government is weak and the police and the security service they can do things. And I think this is the explanation is terrible in from now the of the Libyan people, of the people see is a city that destruction, by and actually a great deal of sympathy and support for countries like France, like Turkey. But this did not a very small of arms the concerns in other. This obviously did not the views of the Libyan people because of the lack of authority, because it was not enough law and order and to attack. They were able to do that. So in this period of transition from authoritarian to stable, is a great danger that militant groups, that violent, could take advantage of this vacuum and to problems. There are limits to can do as to what piece of that Turkey is playing can play without better understanding of different nationalities, religions. I think Turkey itself. I mean, Turkey has a long tolerance that everyone knows. I mean, Turkey is the country that even before it was Turkey, when it was, of course, the Ottoman Empire, that the Spanish Jews that had from Spain by in 1492. It is a country that maintained when the norm in Western Europe was fusion, where it maintained multiplicity of different religions, religious and national groups. So Turkey a very strong history of tolerance, that I think can be very helpful And also the the practice of religion in Turkey has been very, wrote the book The Rise of Political Islam in Turkey, Paul, that while the majority of Turkey were Muslims, that in fact they exhibit of tolerance for those people from other but, yes, and that has been seen daily practice in Turkey. At the same time, was most about Turkey, and was of the model that Turkey present other in the Middle that in see an example of the compatibility of Islam and because case from and polemicists that the least democracy Middle East that's to have a religious heritage, to have a successful democracy, elements within the Islam that are not consistent with democracy. But what countries like Turkey and also like Indonesia and Malaysia, for example, have shown, yes, it is possible, and in fact it's done. Countries, majority, I mean, it's a 99% Muslim in the case of Turkey, at the same time have a democratic government. I think that the most important thing can do with regard to the development of development in the Middle East, example, can have a government party, religious roots, and it's individuals who are Muslim, and at the same time, this is not in any way able the system that Turkey could be very important to encourage people in other Middle East countries under this process of change to believe that yes, it is possible to there and also a political system. And Turkey important role now as a unique country in majority, but secular democracy.
Yes.
It's part of NATO.
Ally of the United States.
Right. In NATO, and but it's also history of the Middle East. It's also part of has affinities to
right.
In many Central Asian countries, language have affinities with Turkish.
Right.
It has standing relations with Russia, with the Balkans.
Right.
So it's quite multi-dimensional, makes it important. United States, from sort of to the United States in the 19th century, say around the middle of the 19th century, when the United States at the time had immigration of Irish and Italian and from Catholic Italians and other Catholics in the United States in the 19th century. At the time, the Catholic religion was with American-style democracy. And they look at Europe, look at Spain. So argument was made Catholicism in the 19th century. Today there is no incompatibility. And Catholic countries in Europe are Catholic. So I think it's Islam that argument is made is not compatible with a democratic system, that it has to do really with culture and of people, to accept the values of democracy. And you're tolerant. It is, tolerance is just one of the to be important. The term with regard to Muslims, because it implies that less, maybe, less as religion. That is not the case. But type of, I think, of mainstream Islam that, again, has been under and one of the characteristics, I would to the type of Islam, that should be defended, is respect for and minorities. We see suppress in where radical are in power, in places like Iran, for example, in an where women give they have in places like Turkey, and when was called apostasy, it's a crime. One problem that I think that in analyzing these issues, especially with regard to the treatment of women, is that sometimes we use religion with, and as you say, Islam is perfectly compatible, with respect rights of women and just minorities. But sometimes local cultures are not hospitable this type of equality. And the problem we see in some places is that people was kind of a cultural, which might not be normal from our perspective, with a religious obligation. And they think that depriving women, people of certain rights, is obligation. It's really more culture than, yes. So that's sometimes people confuse their own culture with their religion.
Yes,
and
you're definitely right. Yeah.
And it's very, I mean, if I could make a value judgment, when people, in some, in certain places, they confuse culture, religion with Islam in this case, but they think that their culture should be forced on people. Yeah. And we see one good case of that, I think, is in the Bosnia, during the Bosnia, and in my State Department position, trying to the Bosnian Federation, we found is that individuals who were very influenced by the Saudis would desecrate these beautiful mosques that had been built by the Ottomans, would get rid of decoration, paint them white, because this wasn't properly accepted. Wrong. They were obeying their own cultural ideas, because things were in Saudi Arabia that they had such a, to the point that before that that the sources of terrorism played a radical and of the Quran. It's not that we can deal with. I mean, because no authority tell us or Quran come your debate a radical missing. What do I have? It has to be done by others themselves, because it's that again, because they have their own scholars, and they select their own interpretations of their position. And the difference, from an analytical perspective, the difference between Muslims, the majority of Muslims, interpret the way in which they do it is that all of the Quran and all of the tradition, whereas would look at few verses that support their position and they would ignore. So you have a very but it show may not know difference. Their interpretation wrong and stream need to and need to explain the interpretation wrong. This is why at bottom down ideological conflict. In other words, whose ideology is going to prevail? The radicals, the ideology that has been not the ideology, but because it's not an ideology, but the way in which Islam has been traditionally interpreted